The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How are you? Happy Thursday. Hope you guys are having a good week. Man, what an eventful week. What a crazy week, actually. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we want to talk about. Well, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. All right, Monday's episode and Tuesday's episode. I've got one friend, he's like, dude, I love it how you always say, if you didn't get a chance to listen to this episode, it's probably my best. He's like, bro, we listen to your podcast. You don't need to keep selling us. And then I told him, I'm like, I'm seriously not trying to sell you on listening. I just genuinely feel that way about, many episodes. I'm sorry, I really do. But I have to tell you, the episode with Dr. Brian on Monday, I actually got a great message from a lifelong friend, longtime listener, my man Len Spacek. Hadn't heard from him in a while. You know, my guy Lenny's not into politics too much, and I get that. So I'm like, yeah, he's probably dropped off listening because Ray D's gone heavy on the geopolitics. But you know what? That's what the people want. I'm giving the people what they want. Plus, I love it. I'm not gonna lie. All right. So anyway, got a really nice message from Lenny. He said, hey, that was such a great episode. One of the best podcasts he's ever listened to. So I really appreciate that. No, but it was really good. What an awesome guy Brian was. And I'm definitely going to have him back on because I told him, I actually shared Lenny's message with him and he was so appreciative. Oh my God. You know how when you talk to somebody or you meet somebody and I don't know, you just get it that they're a really appreciative person. And so I didn't share Lenny's name, but I kind of copied the message and I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know the episode came out on Monday. It's been getting amazing feedback. And here's an example. And he called me right away and he's like, this is so meaningful to me. I've been kind of, going through a little bit of soul searching. And he's like, wow, this really made my day. And I'm sharing all that because, I'm at a point, in all honesty, in some days and sometimes with this podcast where, again, I mean, it's pretty good. I'm not going to flex on my numbers, but they're not bad. I mean, they're not bad, but they're not, they're not like amazing. For me, my problem is I don't compare myself to probably people that I should. Instead, it's like, I want to be in the Joe Rogan stratosphere. I want to be in the Tucker Carlson stratosphere, the Candace Owens stratosphere. Honestly, I don't think I'm as good as any of those. I really don't. But I'd like to continue to grow. And for me, that's kind of who I compare myself to, which is probably a huge mistake because again, they are elite at what they're doing. And in Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson's case, obviously they've been doing it a hell of a lot longer. And even Candace, she's been at this since 2017. So anyway, but my point is, regardless of whether you're enormous at anything or small at anything, it's like little things, one little thing from, I shouldn't even say little, one thing from one person can totally impact another person tremendously. And I genuinely feel like the sharing of the feedback from Len to Brian, I honestly think it really maybe helped Brian get out of his funk, whatever funk he was going through. I don't even know. We didn't get into it too much, but anyway, I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to start off by kind of sharing that little story, but really the episode, I'm not going to ruin it for those that listened. But it was just wild because we naturally went from talking about, preservatives and health and wellness and being a food scientist and digging into, various topics of ingredients to all that, to then him sharing, walking across America in honor of his dad with no money and sleeping on the side of the street, which that still blows me away, to then jumping forward to like, the dude did LSD at Burning Man. I mean, like, just insane. But the fact that he was so authentic to kind of talk about all those things, and quite frankly, that our conversation somehow lent itself to authentically and comfortably talking about all those things, I think it's a really good episode. And then on Tuesday, I finally launched the episode with Bart Sabrell, which, this guy's been on, well, speaking of which, he's been on Joe Rogan, he's been on Candace Owens, I believe he's been on Tucker Carlson, and he is kind of the guy that really pokes holes in the moon landing and basically calls the 1969 Neil Armstrong Buzz Aldrin moon landing a hoax. And it's a really good episode. I will say this about the episode with Bart. I was a little surprised at he was a little more reserved than I had seen him in previous interviews. And I kind of shared that with him a few days later, kind of when we were editing it. And it turns out he's a Christian now, and so I mean, good for him. But he's not as hardcore, and he's not as hardcore because I think he feels like he shouldn't be. But our interview, I was kind of wanting a little more raw nature to it, and that wasn't there. But he brought up such a variety of interesting things to ponder. So again, so that was Tuesday. All right, housekeeping out of the way. Okay, as much as I was like not planning on kind of revisiting the Charlie Kirk stuff, I do think we need to revisit it a little bit because, there's a lot of moving parts to this. And my goal overall with everything, and you guys know this, is, I'm just kind of presenting you things as I see them. Now, again, obviously, yes, I have a direction that I think, or not even a direction. I have my thoughts on who did it, who has the most to gain, who has the most to lose. That's actually a great way to think about so many situations. Who has the most to gain from Charlie Kirk being assassinated? And then think about who had the most to lose from Charlie Kirk not being assassinated and Charlie Kirk staying alive. Let me say that again. This is a great way to think through all this stuff. And it really applies to this, but I'm sure we can apply it to so many other things. But who has the most to gain from the assassination of Charlie Kirk? And then who had the most to lose had Charlie Kirk not been assassinated? And let's say continued down the path and trajectory he was continuing down. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you some more things that have come out, and well, they've been out, but some more pieces of this puzzle that I think you need to take in order to, collectively we try to understand what's going on. All right, let me play you some important clips. Let's start with this one. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to let it play all the way through. This guy did a really good job and he's just like a random dude on Instagram. I think he's a doctor actually, but he did a really nice job of summing up the official narrative. Okay. Now, obviously you'll realize after like 5 seconds that he's kind of being facetious about it. Is that the right word? Facetious? Oh, is that the right word? Oh my God. He's kind of poking fun at it by saying it, but just this is the narrative. I mean, this is the narrative that is the official storyline. And the reason everybody's up in arms is because it doesn't make any sense. So I'm not going to interrupt this. I'm going to let you listen to this all the way through.
All right, let's go over the official Charlie Kirk narrative because I'm kind of slow. 22-year-old who got radicalized online but has no social media presence. Took a rifle, but has no shooting experience, according to his grandma.
All right, I lied. Sorry, I have to interject here. So That's two things that are true. He's a 22-year-old that got radicalized online, but then again, there's no social media presence. So the kid's got no social media presence, but he got radicalized online. That makes zero sense. Now, there's a lot of debate as to whether he had shooting experience or did not have shooting experience. The kid's grandmother said he did not have any shooting experience. I believe the grandmother. He doesn't look like a kid that has shooting or had shooting experience. But again, I can't say one way or another on that.
Snuck in to this campus, assembled the rifle with no extra tools, put the scope on with no practice shots, had it perfectly aligned, and with one shot, had a shot, took it, disassembled, jumped off the roof, changed clothes again, reassembled the rifle, threw it into the woods.
All right, this is probably the area that is being picked apart like so easy on Instagram, particularly pretty much by like former Green Berets, Navy SEALs, guys that have been in special forces. And literally to a guy, they talk about the process of disassembling a rifle like this. I think it's called a Hauser. They said it's incredibly difficult, incredibly time consuming, and it takes tools. Okay. So you need like an Allen wrench and another type of pliers. Now, just put yourself in this kid's situation. Imagine if you had just literally assassinated Charlie Kirk and how freaking nervous and how much adrenaline you'd have going through your body as you're trying to get away and basically disappear, jumping off of a roof, doing all this, and then literally, oh, I'm sorry, supposedly he disassembled that rifle on the roof. Like that process would be insane. You'd be so nervous and you'd have so much adrenaline running through you. I don't know if you've ever worked with an Allen wrench or a hex key or whatever, but they're a pain in the ass. Like those are not easy tools to deal with. So this part's gotten debunked like crazy. And again, from like dudes that are literally, actually even a lot of snipers have came out and said this is virtually impossible to disassemble this in minutes the way they're saying that he did. And then even when he jumped off the roof, you could see supposedly where the rifle was supposed to be, the bag ended up being a hoodie because it bent when he jumped. So anyway, that part is incredibly hard to wrap your mind around. And then the fact that he's changing clothes twice and then also reassembling the rifle. Like, why reassemble it? Why put it back together and then wrap it in a towel and dump it in the woods? That doesn't make any sense.
Went 250 miles, talked to someone on a random app, and confessed. His dad turns him in. And now here we are. Keep in mind, this 22-year-old with no previous experience of any of this planted two patsies at the event to draw cover for him, claiming they were the shooters briefly.
All right, I got to jump in real quick. I don't even know who the second patsy was, but the first patsy was that old white dude. His name is like George Zinn or something. Anyway, this is the guy that like at the beginning was like, I did it. And he completely sucked all the attention one way while whomever was probably the actual real shooter was doing, going the other way. So then this George Zinn guy, it came out that he had like child pornography on his phone, and everyone was like, see, he's a scumbag. And in my opinion, that was on purpose because it basically discredited him. But he had already done his job. He had played his role. And this guy's role was to divert all the attention on site and on social media for a good hour or so to him. So in the other direction, sleight of hand, something else could be going on another way. Now, this George Zinn guy has also been shown to like he was at 9/11. He was there at 9/11, and then he was somewhere else. Another like really random awful catastrophe, this guy was there. So it's obvious this guy's like a professional rebel rouser or rabble rouser, whatever that word is. I like that word actually. And here's the crazy thing. The FBI or nobody is talking about, well, what's the link between him and Tyler Robinson? Like, why would they be doing this together? Because they weren't. They didn't have anything to do with each other. But I'm telling you, the fact that they found like child pornography on his phone, the next day, that's just to discredit him as a witness overall, not even a witness, as a part of this overall. So basically everybody pretty much writes him off and they stop talking about how he actually fulfilled his job and his role, which was, he was the distraction for the first, probably 60 to 75 to 90 minutes of this whole thing on Wednesday.
So he could have cover to get away. I haven't seen a ballistics report. I'm not sure if that's been done at all. And the crime scene was starting to get broken down by Turning Point members, 6 minutes after this.
All right, this is ridiculous, and I do need to chime in on this. Literally, the crime scene, as soon as they took Charlie's body away from that little holding area on the field or the grass, they started breaking down that area. They did not tape it off with yellow caution tape and turn it into a crime scene. And then the weirdest thing of all was there was literally a camera behind Charlie that should have captured everything, including where the bullet kind of came from. Because there's a lot of disagreement on, was it a clean shot right into the neck, or did the bullet come from the right side, hit his bulletproof vest metal plate, and then bounce up into the neck? Meaning, was that the exit wound instead of the entrance wound? I personally think it absolutely came from the roof and it was a clean shot to the left side of his neck. But there's a lot of argument as to whether the bullet came from the right side. Well, that camera that was literally directly behind Charlie Kirk should capture or have captured all that footage. But 6 minutes after this, you can see what looks like normal Turning Point USA staff completely taking down the camera and then also that entire crime scene.
No crime scene, no investigation, just take it down, shut her down. Charlie Kirk left in an SUV, still no autopsy that I've seen, but apparently, we got our guy. And it's not weird at all that Charlie was scared of one country taking him out. And it's not weird at all that the leader of that country was the first leader around the world to declare the death of Charlie.
All right, so this is the majority of the talk that's really on Instagram for sure, actually TikTok as well, and a little bit of Facebook. But, basically the fact that did Israel take him out because he was starting to maybe, change his allegiance and starting to basically maybe lean toward what Candace Owens has been saying, what Tucker Carlson has been saying, what now Megyn Kelly has been saying. And again, I'm going to play you some stuff. You've got to come to these conclusions on your own. You really do. But what I will say is what this guy said is totally true. The fact that he died was first reported in the Jerusalem Post. Like, how is that possible? How is it possible that an Israeli newspaper, whom they are 13 hours ahead of California, how is it first reported in the Jerusalem Post even before, the USA Today, CNN, Fox, all those guys? That's a little bit weird. And then he's right again about Netanyahu. This is weird too. Netanyahu and Trump basically tweeted out at the same time, I think it was 3:02 p.m. Eastern time, that Charlie Kirk was dead. That was weird. Both of them, you can see this anywhere online. It's in so many different places. But the fact that they both tweeted at 3:02 p.m. Eastern time, that was strange. And then after that, if you noticed it was really Thursday and Friday, Netanyahu was all over the Newsmax, News Nation, the New York Post, Fox, all the right-wing places, not any of the left-wing stuff like CNN or MSNBC or even ABC, CBS, NBC. He was all over Fox, News Nation, who else? New York Post, all those right-wing places, basically doing interviews about this. And people were like, dude, aren't you fighting like 7 wars with like 20,000 other countries, but you've got time to like go out of your schedule and get airtime on US media and you're a foreign leader? That doesn't really make any sense.
And it's not weird at all that article from that country was the first article about the shooting. Also totally normal since this happened. Epstein files have been blocked by Congress, and Congress passed more laws banning any criticism of that one country. And there you have it. The same media, 3-letter agencies that gave you the truth on MLK, JFK, 9/11, COVID, shots in the arm, the Butler shooting, have figured it out. We got our guy. And that's the story. So keep on trucking, and we'll see you on the next one.
Oh my God, I seriously love humanity. I love people. I really do. I love people. But you know what? They're going to take the internet away from us. There's just no doubt in my mind. They're going to take the internet away. People are too damn smart, and they are too fast to rifle through the bullshit. Oh my God, it's hilarious. I'm joking about taking the internet away, although maybe I'm not, but I think that's so funny. Anyway, there are just a lot of people with a lot of views, and I'm so glad they're expressing it. All right, so I thought that was really good. That took a little bit longer than I wanted, but he really did cover pretty much that's pretty much the narrative. Okay. So if you want to get up to speed as to what quote unquote they're telling us, that's pretty much what they're telling us. So you have to decide, what you think about that. All right. Let me play some hardcore clips, and I'm going to start with a couple from Tucker Carlson because he had not really said much for the first few days, and now he is. All right, actually, let me set this up. So what he's talking about is he's basically addressing the fact that Charlie Kirk brought Tucker to the Turning Point USA event July of this year. So just a few months ago in Tampa. I believe I played a bunch of those clips. But remember how I said, I think I said this on the episode from Thursday, which, by the way, that episode from Thursday is tracking to be my highest ranked episode ever. We're like over 26,000 downloads on that. That's pretty good. Okay, so remember how I said that, was Charlie Kirk starting to have a change of thought process in regards to his stance on Israel? And again, was he starting to drift to Team Candace, whom he maintained his BFF friendship up until literally his dying day? Rest his soul on that. And then even Tucker, who's his kind of like mentor, Now, he wasn't outwardly coming out and saying things, but the simple fact that he had Tucker Carlson at the Turning Point event, he had comedian Dave Smith, who is a staunch Jewish American anti-Zionist, had him at the event. He had Megyn Kelly at the event. He didn't have Candace. I don't think that would have been possible. He wouldn't have been able to do that. But Tucker, Dave Smith, Megyn Kelly, he took a lot of shit from people for even having them at the event and giving them his platform, which, remember, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of Gen Z Christian white American youth. That's the Gen Z power base for both the Republican Party and the Judeo-Christian world. Okay, so listen to Tucker here.
The ones who were offended by my speech, and there was a small, very intense group who were, tormented Charlie Kirk until the day he died. 2 days before he died, he lost a $2 million donation because he had publicly pledged to bring me to the next Turning Point conference in December. And he told me over the past couple of months he was losing a lot of donations over that pledge. They put out a flyer basically saying that I was going to be at this event giving a speech. And so he would text me and say, man, I'm really taking a lot of heat for this, and people are really mad. The American Jewish Committee called in a statement Charlie Kirk an anti-Semite and, quote, dangerous. Charlie Kirk, an anti-Semite. Yeah. He was not an anti-Semite. He was the opposite, and he was not dangerous. He was a great lover of people and a purveyor of peace. He was the opposite. And he was very stung by that. Those of us who've been called names for a long time are a little bit harder to offend. Charlie was deeply offended by that and expressed some of those feelings on Megyn Kelly's show and in other places. But that did not let up. The reason I'm telling this story is because he called me and then came to see me at my house about this topic. And I said to him every single time, look, I've got my own way to communicate my views. This is actually not the most important issue to me. There are lots of things I can talk about. I don't need to come to Turning Point. I can take a year off, no problem. I hated seeing how much he was suffering, the hassle he was getting from people, and I was being attacked too, by the way.
All right, I let that play all the way through without interrupting it because I do think that was very important to take that all in, okay? Now, again, remember, these two are very close friends. And by the way, remember, one thing that gets lost in all this is Charlie Kirk was only 31 years old, man. That is young. And again, this is why I say he absolutely was a tremendous talent. He really was. He really was. And for those of you that don't like Charlie Kirk or did not like Charlie Kirk, you have to understand he was an immense talent. I was trying yesterday to think about somebody on the liberal democratic left that I could compare him to, and there really isn't anybody. I can't even think of anybody. The kid was legit. He really was. He was ridiculously smart, incredible, like thinker on his feet. But again, he's only 31. Tucker Carlson, I believe, is 56, 57. So he did look at Tucker as a mentor, okay? He really did look at Tucker as a mentor. Okay, here's part 2 of that Tucker speech.
I was shocked and sickened by the reaction of the ghoulish and really repulsive reaction of the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to Charlie's death. Basically made it all about him and all about his country, immediately trying to take the energy, the sadness, the grief that people felt over Charlie's murder and redirect it towards support for whatever project he's involved in. And by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu is not the same as the nation of Israel at all. Bibi is despised by many people in Israel. And if you know people who live there, you know that that's true. There are huge divisions within the Israeli government. I mean, there are certain parts of the intel world in Israel that do not support some things that Benjamin Netanyahu has done recently. So it's not the same as attacking Israel, attacking Bibi. But I don't think I've ever seen anything lower than his attempt to hijack Charlie's memory and use it for his own political ends, particularly because what he said was completely untrue. Charlie didn't hate Jews. He loved Jews. He had tons of friends who were Jews. He loved the state of Israel. He loved going there. He did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said it to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening in Gaza.
All right, I did have to interject on this. If Charlie Kirk was appalled by what was happening in Gaza, honestly, the fact that he really never said anything about it, to me, shows a real either lack of, I don't know, deep down integrity, or maybe he was that scared. I get it. But regardless, I don't give him a pass for that. If he was appalled by what was happening in Gaza, you know what, man? You do have a big you did have a big platform, and you could have said something. There should have been something said. Now, maybe him again giving his platform to the Tucker Carlsons, the Megyn Kellys, the Dave Smiths, and then not attacking Candace Owens ever, by the way. That's another interesting thing. Maybe that was his way of doing it. But I will say, again, when I talk to people that are super pro Charlie Kirk, I do bring that up and I say, hey, I can't give him a pass for that, even though I know there was probably a lot of fear involved. Now, again, I'm going to be fair. Until you're in that position, you don't know how hard or how much that pressure is. And obviously, based on the fact that in whoever is responsible, the kid paid the ultimate price. You do have to factor that in. I get it. I am not trying to be all high and mighty there. But anyway, I did want to kind of interject that little piece in terms of Tucker saying he was appalled by what was happening in Gaza. I did not ever hear him ever express that verbally. All right, let's listen to the rest of this.
He was above all resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit of his country, and that it was shameful and embarrassing and bad for the United States, and he resented it. Didn't hate Netanyahu. He wasn't out there with a placard saying that, but he certainly expressed that to me and a lot of other people. And there's no question that Bibi's defenders on the internet will call me a liar or a kook, but that's a fact. And enough text messages exist that I think it can probably be verified in pretty short order. Not that it needs to be, because that is true.
I will say this in terms of Tucker and Candace Owens. I mean, think about how much you text message with your closest friend on an issue. So I cannot imagine Tucker Carlson having said all of that if he didn't already know he's got all the receipts needed to back it up in case he ever needs to. And then the same thing with Candace Owens. I mean, she's going scorched earth on her podcast in regards to all of this. And again, she's got all the text messages. She already published one of them. And so I have a feeling she's going to publish a bunch more. The other thing is, in regards to Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, they were incredibly good friends, if not best of friends. I mean, that's what Candace said. She said they were best of friends, and they remained best friends, literally up until the day he passed. So that made me think, like, man, that is so interesting that two people in such high profile positions with such, dichotomy of their stance on the most controversial topic that's gripped, life and the world for practically the past 2 years. How the hell did they maintain their friendship? I mean, that's pretty wild. I don't think I've lost any friends over any stuff that I've talked about, but I will say I'm sure it's strained some friendships. I'm sure maybe some people have, and again, whether it's this stuff or whether it's talking about the vaccines and talking about COVID or talking about Russia, Ukraine, or whatever I've talked about, I'm sure that I have to imagine if some of my friends felt the opposite of some of the things I've posted or talked about on this podcast, I'm sure that has played a role in our friendship. I might not even know it, but maybe the fact that I haven't heard from XYZ person in 6 months or 9 months, maybe that's the answer right there. So it is very hard for me to understand how Charlie and Candace, who again were so like diametrically opposed on this issue, managed to maintain their friendship, unless behind the camera, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, maybe they weren't as diametrically opposed as we think they are, or we thought they are, without being privy, quite frankly, to their actual relationship. Let me read you something. So this was what I wrote under a post of, basically, Candace Owens posted a text message from her and Charlie Kirk. And the text message was basically Charlie reciting Kanye West lyrics, okay? I call him Kanye West. I don't like to call him Ye, although he probably would kill me if I ever met him. He'd be like, that's my name. Call me Ye. Ray. All right. So I'm not going to read you the lyrics because it kind of doesn't really matter that much, but this is what I wrote, and I think this is I think it's pretty insightful. I really do. And this is a Radio original, by the way. All right, it says, Candace Owens has published a very recent SMS text message she received from her best friend Charlie Kirk, according to her. It's a lyric from the Kanye West song, Power. For starters, don't you find it interesting that Charlie Kirk is quoting Kanye West in a recent text message? Of all people, Kanye? Isn't he supposed to be off limits for somebody like Charlie Kirk? Okay, let me say that again for those in the back. Candace Owens has published a very recent text message that she received from her best friend, according to her, Charlie Kirk, quoting a Kanye West lyric. If you followed Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk over the past 2 years, you would know that they took the opposite stance on the situation in Gaza. That has ruined many friendships across the world. It has ruined relationships within families. But somehow, two of the most high-profile individuals on social media who were polar opposites on the most polarizing topic, supposedly, somehow remained best friends. That's impressive if true, and rare. Think through that. Could there have been more to Charlie's true feelings, or did the two of them, who seem to talk about everything else in this world, simply not talk about the most important issue that they've talked about on their respective platforms? That seems highly unlikely. Or was Charlie changing? And if he changed, and by the way, this is the most important part, okay? And if he changed, that means he would most likely take the entire Gen Z Turning Point USA young base of Christian Republicans with him. All right, so again, at this point, in terms of kind of things from Tucker Carlson, things from Candace Owens, I'm going to play a Megyn Kelly thing for a second. Just remember, again, I mean, was he changing? Was he changing his mindset? By the way, I don't think his mindset, or quite frankly, Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, it's not like I think they give a shit that much about Palestinian people. I really don't. I mean, I know that might surprise some of you. And the reason I say that is because most people that truly, bleed for the Palestinian people, the first thing and the loudest thing they say is they say free Palestine, right? That's the quote, that's the term, free Palestine. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, I've never heard them say free Palestine. I've obviously never heard Megyn Kelly say free Palestine because she's also a recent convert to even being critical of Israel. But think about that for a second. I've never heard Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens say free Palestine. I don't even know if I've heard the comedian Dave Smith say it. I'll try to go back and find it. But my point of that is, I don't necessarily think, even with Tucker and Candace, it's about the freeing of Palestine. What I think it's about is the influence Israel has over our government, coupled with, quite frankly, their belief that Christians are being persecuted equally as Muslims. That's another thing. And then the third part of it is maybe because of their Christian values. I mean, if they're truly a religious person, they do not think, killing thy neighbor is Christ-like. So maybe they are that Christian that they believe that. But regardless, again, I mean, this is another interesting thing to think about. Neither Tucker nor Candace, I've never heard them on record say free Palestine. Now, if anybody has that, send it to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I said, I mean, again, I applaud and appreciate their efforts. All I'm pointing out is that I don't think they've ever taken it to that, final degree, right? All right, next thing, I played a couple clips on Thursday's podcast. And by the way, if you didn't listen to Thursday's, I believe it's episode 360, definitely go listen to that. God, I should have said this at the beginning, but it doesn't really matter. Go back and listen to that. That was really good to give you a real foundation that I think we're building on today. But I played a couple clips from Charlie's appearance on the Patrick Bet David podcast back on October 12th, 2023, okay? And it was excellent. He was amazing in that. Here is another clip from that I found, and this is equally as impressive because remember, this is 5 days after October 7th. Nothing has really happened yet, but listen to what Charlie predicts.
They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, that's and I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. There is this idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
All right, the most important part of that was literally, think about it, on August 12th, 5 days after October 7th in 2023, he basically said they're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And that's pretty much what's played out over the past 2 years. So again, I give him such credit on that. This is why I'm saying he was an absolutely sharp kid. He really was. And I will say his pattern recognition was incredibly fine-tuned. COVID, the Maui fires, he was super, super on point. I mean, like ridiculously on point in regards to both of those. So I give him a lot of credit for both of those. All right, so that's that. Let me see what else. Gosh, I guess I do want to say this. I don't think you can, well, you can, but I don't think you need to have an all or nothing opinion of Charlie Kirk. I really don't. I don't think you need to have an all or nothing opinion. I don't have an all or nothing opinion. If you have listened to episode, I think I said 360 earlier, but it's 370. God damn, I've done so many of these things, I forget. But if you had listened to episode number 370, which was the one I launched Thursday that talks about him, and then listen to today, I don't know. I think a lot of people, and actually I did get a lot of feedback about episode 370. I'm curious what the feedback will be today. I had a lot of people just say, hey, that was pretty fair. That was a fair analysis that you gave. And no one really said, do you like Charlie Kirk or do you not like Charlie Kirk? And again, what I mean about all or nothing is I'm not all or nothing on him. I'll tell you what I am all or nothing on. I don't think he deserved to lose his life. Okay? Like, nobody does. Not for what they say. That's just, you cannot go down that path. You cannot go down that path. So that is definitely a hard stop for me. Okay? He deserved to lose debates. I said it the other day. I'll say it again. And I actually had somebody tell me they used that. She knows who she is if she's listening to this. And I appreciate that. And that's where it boils down to. He deserves to lose debates and get humiliated in debates. And all of that, kind of like Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray got humiliated on that episode with the comedian Dave Smith on Joe Rogan. And he's really kind of not been in the public spotlight ever since, okay? He really hasn't. He hasn't been in the public spotlight ever since that. That's how it should have been, If Charlie Kirk had debated Nick Fuentes, he would have gotten destroyed. He would have absolutely gotten destroyed. That would have been easy work for Nick, as they say in the fight game. And you know what? Maybe that's kind of what he deserved, to get easy worked by Nick Fuentes. But he would never debate Nick Fuentes. Ben Shapiro will never debate Nick Fuentes. All of these guys. And again, remember, Nick Fuentes is 26. Damn, Charlie Kirk's 31 or was 31. Nick Fuentes is 27 now, actually. So, man, these are some sharp young kids. All right, I'm at 43 minutes. I really do have a lot more to play, but I want to just finish out on just some real thoughts on the guy. Again, did not deserve that. I would much rather have him alive and with us and debating Nick Fuentes more than anything. But he also did say some incredibly divisive stuff that has huge ramifications. I mean, I'm talking about, as crazy as this sounds, he sort of was one of the people that was influencing people's mindsets to where, let's say, hypothetically, I'm going to knock on wood and I hope it doesn't happen, but I don't know, man. I feel like it's going to. Another 9/11 type attack happens and they pin it on a bunch of Muslims, just like they did with 9/11. If you are still thinking 19 random Muslim dudes with box cutters were able to overthrow or overtake 4 planes, fly them around for 6 hours, and not have the most sophisticated missile system to date, NORAD, scrambled jets to do anything, and then fly them on these crazy routes. I'm not even going to get into it. You're a lunatic if you still, after 20 years, think that 9/11 was what they sold us, that bill of goods they sold us. You are seriously a lunatic, and you need mental help. I'm being dead serious about that. I normally don't get as hardcore like that, but I'm sorry, I have to. Because again, the ramifications of what happened after 9/11, think about it. You're talking about 1.6 million innocent Iraqis killed. You're talking about $8 trillion. You're talking about a 20-year forever war. All of those things, those are people's lives that got taken with a big lie, okay? And the problem I have with Charlie Kirk is kind of the problem I ended episode 370 with. He was very divisive with Muslim rhetoric, you know? And again, that's not good, and I can't give him a pass on that. And I think that if a 9/11 type event happened again, I mean, God, I hope it doesn't. I could absolutely see him, being an advocate for doing whatever it takes. And I do have a clip, and I'm going to end on this clip because, again, you have to have balanced perspective because this is a complicated issue. So I'm going to end on this clip. I'm going to let you listen to it. Chances are this clip will get played again with other things. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to give you, a very balanced picture of who he was all around. But I'm just going to say it again. He absolutely should be alive, and he should be losing debates, not his life. But give this a listen.
So, it's funny. I used to say that, hey, if you as a gay person would go to Gaza, they'd throw you off of tall buildings, right? Now they don't have any tall buildings left, so I don't...
When you mess with the bull, you get the horns.
Is that too soon? I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't kill Jews, stupid Muslims.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Zip more, smoke less. Totally satisfying, discreet, and delicious. Zippix nicotine-infused toothpicks are available in 6 great flavors, each containing at least 2 milligrams of nicotine to curb those cravings. Zippix is FDA registered and proudly made in the USA. Use discount code DSD for 10% off your order at zippixtoothpicks.com. Zip more, smoke less, save 10%.